So here's yet another example of calculating stocking rate in scenario 3. Again, stocking rate is where we're trying to find a relationship between a forage supply and forage demand. In this case, we have a ranch near Mountain Home, Idaho, and we have 3 pastures. We have the west pasture, the northeast pasture, and the home pasture. And as is my tradition, I like to start on forage supply for whatever reason. We're going to start on forage supply. Let's start with that home pasture. I try to lay all the pastures out, but let's start with the home pasture. And first, let's take a look at this native prairie area of that pasture. It's this northern part of the pasture. It's a sandberg bluegrass and some other more productive grasses. But in general, the range condition is fairly low, they said, in this scenario. And it takes 6.5 acres to create an AUM of forage. So in that pasture, there are 442 acres of land that is that native pasture. It takes 6.5 acres per AUM. So if you take 442 divided by 6.5, that means that pasture would provide 68 AUMs of forage. That pasture also has another part down in the lower area, which is a crested wheatgrass seeding. So this crested wheatgrass is pretty productive. It takes 3 acres to produce an AUM. So if you take the area that is created by that 540 acres in that crested wheatgrass seeding, divide by 3 acres per AUM, you get 180 AUMs in that lower part of the home pasture. Let's take a look at the northeast pasture. It is all of a native area. There's 270 acres that, according to the diagram, it is productive at 6 acres per AUM or 45 AUM. So if you took 270 divided by 6 acres per AUM, you would get 45 animal unit months of forage out of the northeast pasture. Last example in that 549 acre west pasture. It is all of an area that's dominated by blue bunch wheatgrass, and according to the instructions, it is productive at the rate of about 4.5 acres per AUM. So if you have 549 acres, you divide it by 4.5 acres per AUM, you have about 122 AUMs of forage. So in our in the home pasture, we have 68 plus 180 plus 45 plus 122. So our total forage supply is 415 animal unit months of forage in all 3 of those pastures. How many pounds would that be? Remember how many pounds an AUM is. It's the amount of forage that one animal unit needs for a month. A 1,000-pound animal eats 25 pounds a day times 30 days is 750. So if you take that total forage in pounds, 450 AUMs times 750 is 1,250 pounds of forage. Now let's take a look at the demand. These people are raising some cattle out on their range. They have a herd of about 75 cattle, and these cattle are 1.1 AUMs, 111 pounds, and they graze through those pastures. And if you add up all of the days here, you'll find that they graze about 5.5 months in all of those pastures. They kind of rotate through them. And when you think about how much they graze in each of those pastures, you have 5.5 months. So let's look at forage demand. 75 cows at 1.1 animal unit equivalents means that we actually have 82.5 animal units of demand. In the home pasture, they graze there for 2 months. That's 165 animal unit months of demand. In the north pasture, they graze there for a half month. That's 41.25 animal unit months of demand. And in the west pasture, those 82.5 animal units graze there for 2 months. That's 165 animal unit months of demand. If you total all that up, we got the home pasture. They also come back to the home pasture for another month, so another 82.5 AUMs. If you add all those up, you get 454 AUMs of demand as they go through those 3 pastures. How many pounds of forage demand is that? The total forage demand then is 454 AUMs times 75 pounds per AUM, or 340,500 pounds of demand. So if you add it all up, you have about 311,250 pounds, 311,250 pounds of supply. That's 415 AUMs. Your demand is about 340,500 pounds of demand, or 545 AUMs. That's pretty close. In the real world, these are such kind of broad guesses that those are probably close enough. You may or may not want to change your stocking rate. But if you felt like those were really good estimates, you could potentially decrease your stocking, the number of animals you have. You could therefore decrease animals to meet foal demand, because you have a little bit more forage demand than you have forage supply. So if you want to err on the side of caution, you might just decrease stocking. Remember, these are really big guesses. You got to do a lot of monitoring, and these are just ballpark errors, ballpark estimates, but you might be able to decrease stocking and be pretty safe.